What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of John Wick Chapter 4, the latest entry in the John Wick franchise, starring Keanu Reeves, Chad Stahelski, back once again in the director's chair. Straight up, this is the best John Wick movie. I saw no way going in that this would be the case. Almost 3 hour runtime. John Wick 3 was fun, but certainly kind of bogged down in its mythology. I was like, there's no way they're going to be able to top John Wick Chapter 2 with 4. And they did. John Wick Chapter 4 is spectacular, really exceeded my expectations, and I think this is just kind of a incredible film, honestly. Um, it's riveting. It's an amazing theater experience. It really knows exactly what it is, giving you spectacular set pieces, really funny humor, amazing use of all its talent. It's a travel movie as well. It's kind of everything I wanted it to be. Has a spectacular ending as well. Man, I think John Wick Chapter 4 is really great, really awesome, and must be seen. So I'm going to spoil the shit out of this movie, but just know that I think it's really great. So let's go in. Full spoilers here. So I think John Wick Chapter 4, well, I'm going to talk about the ending at the end here, but like the reason I think this movie is so successful is it just straight up the talent with this film is just so evident, right? Like Stahelski, his bona fides are so established as an action filmmaker at this point that you just have, I think, three like elite set pieces that form this whole movie. Really, two of them, and then one really good one. I would say the opening set piece in Japan, in Osaka, at the Continental in Osaka. That's a absolutely riveting scene. It goes on for a while. It's amazing for many reasons. I'm going to get into all that. Act two, I think, is perhaps the weakest or least great part of the film. We go to Berlin, but you still get that Berlin club set piece featuring Scott Adkins in the fat suit. Scott Adkins, of course, an action legend in his own right. That was still quite good the way it ended. And then, of course, Act three. I thought there was no way that John Wick Chapter 4 could top how phenomenal the Osaka stuff was, and it managed to at least match that greatness with everything you get in Act 3, which of course is Paris, playing all the Paris hits, showing you all the locations, the Moulin Rouge, the Sacre Coeur, the Arc de Triomphe, in an amazing scene. I thought Mission Impossible Fallout, not that recently, played the Paris hits too. But John Wick was like, yeah, we can do that. And it's incredible. So I think you have between the Paris stuff and the Osaka stuff, it's just so good. And then even like I said, like the fact that everything in Berlin is by far the least good stuff in the movie, and it's still like so badass. I think it just really speaks to how stacked this film is with what it's good at. So let's just go into all this stuff right away. So like I said, with John Wick Chapter 3, the mythology is like pretty bogged down, and like the movie in Chapter 4 here kind of acknowledges that like John's like motivations and his path for vengeance against the High Table. It's like kind of like ill defined, and it's like lacking an end game. He's literally called out on this in the film, and despite all that, despite the fact that the High Table and their arcane rules and the backstory and all that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when put under the microscope, it doesn't fucking matter. Did it matter a little bit in Chapter 3? Yeah, kind of. That was my biggest hang up with Chapter 3, which I still enjoyed, obviously. But Chapter 4, it doesn't matter at all. So before you know it, we leave New York and we get to uh, Osaka. And you get, of course, Hiroyuki Sanada as the head of the Continental in Osaka. Japan acting legend, as we know. His daughter, the concierge at that Continental, is played by Rina Sawayama, the pop star. I'm a huge Rina fan. I've reviewed her albums here. I've seen her in concert, reviewed that show too. I knew she was in the film. I didn't know to what extent her role was. And it was a bigger role than I expected. Her role as Akira. And she was way better than I thought she would be. I was really impressed, honestly, both with her acting and her action chops. And the post-credit scene suggests that she'll be involved in the franchise moving forward. I think she should be a shoe-in for the Ana de Armas ballerina spinoff. I think that's like a no-brainer. I thought Rena was really awesome. Shout out to Bow and Arrow there. But Osaka scene also uh, gives you the introduction to the abilities of Kane, played by Donnie Yen. John Wick adding Donnie Yen, of course, the Chinese film legend that he is, adding Donnie Yen is, as Zach Harper said on Twitter, like giving steroids to Barry Bonds in the late 1990s. Donnie Yen is a really talented actor who is very picky with the Hollywood roles he chooses. He largely doesn't work in Hollywood all that often. Think of Rogue One or Triple X2. Like it's few and far between, especially recently. But they got him in John Wick with a fully formed role. And Yen has talked at length about how he was able to kind of craft this character and make it less of a stereotype and just more interesting. And hats off to him because everything he suggested clearly worked. I thought the Kane character was phenomenal, and you get introduction to him, uh, his abilities in Osaka, where you have that kitchen scene where you learn how he's a fighter despite being blind. Very much a play on the classic, blind warrior trope, like the Zaitochi trope. But Yen really imbues him with so much, I think, charisma and obvious action ability, but also like a lot of pathos too. Like this is a really, I think, effective John Wick at kind of communicating, I think, character emotions, despite the fact that John Wick has never been a character that really speaks all that much or really needs to speak all that much. So that Osaka scene, and like right off the bat, like the way it comes to its conclusion, where you have uh, Koji, Haruki Sonata's character, fighting Kane, fighting Donnie Yen, and you know that Koji's gonna die, and you feel like shit. Someone you've just met in this movie, and you're bummed that Koji's gonna die, and you think, oh, is he gonna kill Kira too? Like you feel for that, and like you're really rooting for them, right? And I think that was just a really phenomenal opening set piece. Keanu fighting in like the glass rooms, and I think the coherence of the action in these movies again just remains so effective because I think the Kevlar suits, the fact that you can make these guys like semi bulletproof, obviously requires some leaps in logic, but like it makes the action really fluid. Watching people beat the shit out of each other and keep shooting and shooting each other before someone finally goes down. Getting that first showdown between Kane and John, really satisfying as well. And you know how we get Kane, of course, is that he's kind of pulled out of retirement by the new arch villain of this film, which would be the Marquis, played by Bill Skarsgård. Bill Skarsgård knows the assignment, really chewing on the scenery, playing it up as a new high table villain. I thought he was really great. Um, Act two, like I said, I think it's the least interesting act. The stuff with like John's family and like needing them to untear his paper so he can officially make this challenge to the high table, blah blah blah. Like all that shit doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it's like, oh, there's this new high table rule that I didn't know about until Ian McShane's character, until Winston just told me and told John. Okay, fine, like, you roll with it. No one cares. It's fine, but it's a bit confusing, right? But getting that set piece at like the club where, of course, we meet Kane again. John's there, obviously, and we have Mr. Nobody, who I'll get to in a second, having them all reconverge again in Act Two after converging in Act One, all really works, and then you have this amazing like long fight with Scott Adkins in this fat suit, all prosthetic up, and Scott Adkins, he's not the most famous action actor, but like he is among the best action performers. And the fact that I think Wick was able to add Scott Adkins and add Donnie Yen to its franchise roster the way it did in this film, we're really lacking only a few of like the action greats of the recent times right now. Like I think that the raid actors, right, like Iko Uwais and Joe Taslim, they haven't been in the John Wick movies yet. But other than them, like I think we've hit just about everyone. When you think about the other John Wicks as well. But I really liked how that set piece ended. It's really funny too, watching like people on Molly or whatever dancing in the club as John is moving through the strobes and kicking the shit out of people, yeah, as he often does. Really enjoyable. But I mentioned Mr. Nobody, who is another new character played by probably the least high profile actor in the cast, which would be Shamir Anderson, who I wasn't super familiar with coming in. He plays this kind of tracker character who is interested in taking down John for the bounty, but the bounty's not high enough yet, so he'll maybe think on that a little bit. He has a dog that works with him. A dog, like John Wick once had a dog. you might know where this is going. I actually think the way they play that off with the dog really effective. Honestly, after the journey you've been, after the journey John's been with, I think the way that Mister Nobody kind of moves through the story is really enjoyable, and his you know antagonism to someone he's like begrudgingly working with, the way he interacts with the Marquis, that also really works as well. Um, and then Act Three, you go to Paris, and I immediately thought of Mission Impossible Fallout because all the Paris stuff there, and you see a lot of familiar beats. But before you know it, we have this absolutely bonkers Arc de Triomphe set piece where John is literally fighting amidst the traffic of the Arc. Bonkers stuff, man. It's so crazy. And just kind of watching John rush through Paris to make his final duel with the Marquis on time. It's incredible. You get to the Sacre Coeur, which is of course a great backdrop for anything in a movie. And they didn't film there. You can tell it's a backlot, but it looks good enough. But when he's so close and you get to these stairs to get to the Sacre Coeur, and watching John fight a bunch of French goons as Justice's 2007 song Genesis starts pulsing. What more do you want from this franchise? What more do you want from Keanu Reeves? What more can he do from you? He's 58 years old. Like, it's incredible that this is what he's up to still. And I just thought it was like incredible stuff, honestly. And the way it builds up to this like final duel with Kane, and like you get really, I think, attached to Kane with just a few scenes. The way Kane comes back once again on the stairs, helping John make the duel on time. Then they have to fight each other. Kane, of course, fighting on the Marquis' behalf. Like all this, I think, just works so well. The dramatic stakes, like I'm surprised how effective they are, honestly. And yeah, like it's just kind of insane how how coherent everything manages to be, despite the fact that I think a lot of the lore of the franchise is not very coherent, and it's just crazy how much that doesn't matter at all. Um, so yeah, I mean, shout out Donnie Yen again. Like I thought everything with the way everything ends with Kane is incredible, um, and it sets you up with this ending with John after seemingly not being out of it. I was like, oh, he's gonna have to kill Kane. This sucks. I don't want Kane to die. Kane doesn't die. Oh, but John's gonna die. Fuck. Then again, it's kind of an amazing way to end this franchise. Now, it's clear that there's no guarantee that John is actually dead. Of course, killing the Marquis, surviving the duel as him and Kane barely shoot each other, but kind of collapsing on the steps of the Sacre Coeur after being shot and fucked up and, meeting his end here. It is convincing enough as an ending, right? But let's not forget that earlier in the film, you have the Bowery King, Lauren Fishburne's character, acknowledging that he has a fake gravestone, you know, and John could easily have a fake gravestone now. And on the other hand, I think it's a really effective end for the John Wick character. The John Wick arc I think, it's really landed. The full circle moment of him saving Mr. Nobody's dog in this movie, like really, I thought wrapped it up together. And John kind of, despite the fact that he's still a man of few words, coming to grips with his quarrel against the high table and life is probably at its end. All that's like really good, and the issue is that it's kind of at odds with the fact that the John Wick franchise has never been more popular or more successful. The biggest global launch, the biggest opening weekend of the franchise to date is Chapter Four, and yet is John Wick killed off? I think what's going to happen is at least they'll make the ballerina spin-off first with Ana de Armas. Hopefully, Rina Sawayama's in that too, and they'll reconsider what's going on. Keanu will be in his 60s by the time they would make another John Wick. You know, um, can you make more of these movies and call them John Wick if John Wick's dead? I don't know. It's a bit of a quandary. It sounds like Lionsgate and Stahelski and Keanu will reconsider this in time. It sounds like Stahelski and Keanu are happy to let this breathe for a bit, though Stahelski has not directed a non-John Wick movie yet. And he's been attached to many projects, and I'm sure he'd be happy to spread his wings elsewhere for a while. Can't blame him. And Keanu too. Keanu really had this late career second or third act renaissance start with John Wick 1 in 2014. I'm sure he'd be happy to do some other stuff. Think of how brilliant his extended cameo in Always Be My Maybe was, for example. He'll have more time to do other stuff too. So, do I think John Wick is gone for good? I'll say no, but I think he's gone for at least a little bit. But it's a really effective ending. So, like, I don't know how you can be too mad about it. As much as we would love to see John Wick kill more people in transformative, amazing fashion, it would kind of undo the brilliance of how this movie wraps if you did undo this to me. So I think they'll have to think long and hard about how the ballerina spinoff works, how they use Akira in the future, and find maybe a new anchor to this franchise, whether that's Mr. Nobody or somebody else, because it's the movies are that good and that popular. Like, they're gonna find a way somehow. We know there was a Continental TV show as well that was in the mix. So a lot TBD. But if this was the last, I think it's a spectacular ending, and like I said, it's the best Wick movie, which I still am kind of blown away with how the fact that that's true. I mean, shout out Clancy Brown. He's in this movie just kind of as a high table like operative guy, but it's Clancy Brown, so he's just elevating like a normal ass role because he's really good. That was great. Trying to think other stuff like it. Fishburne is fun as the Bowery King. He's barely in the movie. Ian McShane as Winston, always enjoyable. I loved his kind of like verbal tete-a-tetes with the Marquis when they happened. Of course, we get Lance Reddick in the beginning of the film, the concierge to Winston's hotel in New York, and of course, Lance Reddick's character gets killed by the Marquis as kind of like penance for Winston helping John in earlier films. Unfortunate symmetry, the fact that Lance Reddick recently suddenly passed at the age of, I believe, 60. So that was really tough. But it's kind of like a fitting ending. Like, this movie kind of morbidly has a sign off for Chiron, I believe his character is, for Lance Reddick, where they talk about like what they put on his gravestone, and they put friend, and it kind of echoes a lot of the sentiments people have shared about Lance Reddick as a person. So obviously that was a really sad death that happened recently, but this franchise, through sheer luck and happenstance, handled his death in the franchise really well, honestly. But shout out John Wick Chapter 4. I think this is a really spectacular film, and honestly, we've had two really great franchise sequels in March between John Wick Chapter 4 and Creed 3. So I'm quite pleased with that. But yeah, shout out my girl Rina Sawayama. Shout out Donnie Yen. So fucking good in this movie. Let me know though, what was your favorite aspect about John Wick Chapter 4? There's so many choices, so can't blame you for having a different thought than me. But let me know, how'd you feel about this movie? What was your favorite moment? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.